Hi, today I'm really excited to welcome Dr. Susan Skinner, who is VP or Vice President for Mission at Hill Murray School. And today we're going to talk about her experiences being an oblate. So welcome, Dr. Skinner.
Thank you, Kami. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, great to see you. So I'll start with an easy question for you. How long have you been an oblate?
Well, I was confirmed, although that's not the word that we use, but I made my final oblation May of 2023. So it's been over a year. It's been wonderful.
Great. And Dr. Skinner, what led you to choose to be connected with St. Paul's Monastery?
Well, St. Paul's Monastery actually chose me, which that's how the spirit works, right?
Yeah.
So I started as a baby teacher, a student teacher at Hill Murray in 1985. I was still in college working with my professor over there. And then, of course, I was here at Hill Murray where Sister Pat Collins was still on the staff at that time. And Sister Pat was the one who brought me over, physically brought me over to what we called then the Priory. It's the old building where Tubman is right now, but it was a Priory back then. Now we changed our terminology to monastery. So Sister Pat, Sue, you've got to go over to the monastery with me. And I'm thinking, oh, well, what's going to happen over there? And my aunt is a Franciscan nun, so I understand religious people, right? So I thought, this sounds great. I'm trying to learn everything. And I was, a young teacher figuring out the ropes. So she brings me over. And at the old monastery, at the priory, you walk in and there's this spiral staircase that led up to the chapel. And we walked in, and I can just remember, and this is a long time ago, I can remember walking in and feeling viscerally in my body something different. It felt a slower pace. It felt spiritual. And part of it was the architecture and the art and just the environment itself that was constructed. But there was something beyond that that touched my heart. And I felt this sense of calm and peace. And like I was home, it felt very much at home. And a part of it was Sister Pat was right next to me, and she was my mentor guiding me. So we walk up the staircase and we were going to noon prayer. And there were a lot of nuns in the chapel, and they each had their spot. Many of them were in habits. And we sat down, and Sister Pat handed me the book, and we started the praying, and we started the pace. There's a Benedictine pace to prayer that once you get it in you, anytime it's not Benedictine pace for prayer, it's just like, I don't know, fingernails on a chalkboard. It just didn't feel right. So I felt at home immediately. I felt a sense of spirituality. I felt a sense of welcome. And I felt like I was part of something that had a history, but also a future. And as it turned out, I mean, I ended up at Hill Murray for 20 years. And during those 20 years, we connected a lot with the sisters. We brought students over for retreat, went over for prayer. We were friends with the sisters, maintained relationships. And then I left Hill Murray in 2007. So I was at Hill Murray for 20 years, left Hill Murray to go to another school in the West Metro that also has a Benedictine influence, but not quite the same, but still a little bit of Benedictine influence. And I found myself missing that connection. So when I came back to Hill Murray 3 years ago, I just, of course, I'm going to call up Sister Mary Lou, and it's time. It's time for me to be an oblate. I've waited so long. Let me in. And actually, I called her too late, and the class she already filled the class. So she said, you have to wait. And I remember thinking, how fitting. How fitting is that? Because in being a Benedictine and being an oblate, there is a sense of stepping in line to how the spirit moves and to acquiesce your will to that spirit. And so it was a great first lesson for me. Like, you don't get to have whatever you want whenever you want it. You are stepping in line with the community that moves at the community pace. And I just felt like that was providential, that I had to wait. As it turned out, it was a blessing because I was so like just crazy my first year trying to figure out what. That it wasn't until my second year back at Hill Murray that I felt like I could kind of breathe into my role and really appreciate the initial formation that you, Kami, were one of the leaders that was provided to me during that initial year of formation. So Sister Pat, way back when, and the Holy Spirit, there it is.
Well, and Dr. Skinner, I just so appreciate the fact that you waited, because I do think so often we do end up waiting. And I love the way you phrased it. It felt like home, and it was a
Mhm,
place that had a history
mhm,
and a future. And I think
mhm.
that's what I love about the Benedictine Oblates is I think we're so
Mhm.
much a part of the future with
Yep.
the sisters. So
Yeah,
beautiful.
absolutely. And it's a real commitment. It's not just sort of a sign me up for your club. It's way different. It is so much more. It's just it's a life. It's a yearning. It's just it's it's fulfilling. I don't know. Losing words for the description.
It's so much more. I mean, I think that's a beautiful way to describe it.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about what drew you to study Benedictine spirituality and the rule of Benedict through oblate formation.
Well, I had been studying Benedictine spirituality and the history of our sisters when I was teaching at Hillary, because we teach it in the curriculum at Hillary. And it was always from sort of a little bit of an academic side. And, I am the teacher and I'm teaching you students about this great and wonderful charism and the sisters and St. Benedict and St. Scholastica at an intellectual level and at a teacher level. But when I started in formation, oblate formation, I made this flip to lose that teacher head and take on that student seat. And that felt like such a gift. I think I remember telling you, Cami, at one point, our first retreat was like a spiritual spa.
Yeah.
I'm going to the spiritual spa this weekend, honey. I'll see you when I get back. And he's like, "You're not going to become a nun, are you?" Nope, I'll be an oblate. My husband, I'm talking about. So I think just that idea that studying Benedictine spirituality and studying the history of our sisters, the Sisters of St. Benedict at St. Paul's Monastery, there's an academic head part to it that touches your heart, but the oblate program, you step in fully. Your head, your heart, your hands, that knowing, thinking, and doing, all of those pieces integrate together. And it's very humbling. You think, well, I've studied this. This is familiar. I've read the rule before. No, not like we did in formation. In formation, when you're studying and learning, you're learning at such a deeper level that it touches you in a way that otherwise wouldn't.
Right. Well, and I do remember that spiritual spa day and the chocolate that was involved.
Mhm,
And I could tell through your year of formation that you
mhm.
were making that full head, heart, and
Yeah.
doing connection. And you took the time to really
Mhm,
slow down. And it kind of goes with those whole Benedictine prayer pace,
mhm,
right? It's a different pace, it's a
mhm,
different way of learning where we start with our heart instead of starting with our head. And so I thought you made that shift beautifully. So
mhm.
but yes, I've never had anybody else call it a spa day, but I have had other people worried about husbands asking or wives asking if they're going to come off and join a monastery. And I'm like, we haven't lost any to the monasteries. No fear there. Being an oblate is wonderful. Um,
Mhm,
so this is a fun question. I'm always intrigued by people's answers. What
mhm.
topic from your own year of oblate formation stands out to you as memorable or important to who you are today as an oblate?
You would think I would have some great, lesson we learned on intricate spirituality and whatever, and the history of St. Benedict and monasticism and whatever. It was the session that Karen Barrett led on the Liturgy of the Hours. And, I'd prayed the Liturgy of the Hours. I'm familiar at some level, and, it wasn't new to me. And again, it was sort of that coming with fresh eyes as a child like to the learning. And she taught us in such a way that felt like as she was teaching, the history of the Liturgy of the Hours, where did it come from? What's its purpose? What does it mean? How do you do it? How did the sisters get their prayer book? And she had a big hand in that. And it felt like, this is gonna sound weird. It felt like she was almost singing slash praying to us her lesson, even though she was talking like a teacher, narrating and explaining and doing direct instruction. But as she was talking, I just felt this wash over me, like she was doing the prayer as she was teaching the prayer. And part of it is she is really good. She's a good singer and she has a good Benedictine lilt to her prayers. But I remember that specifically. And now when I do pray the Liturgy of the Hours, I can't help but go back to that place of experiencing it for the not the first time, but the first time in a lot of ways. So that stuck out with me as a spiritual practice. And just the idea that everybody around the world who is into that spiritual practice is praying in this way. So I feel like I'm part of this bigger community, but yet it also is very personal too. You know, when you come to community prayer, there's a community part to it, but there's also a very personal part to it. So I think that was my one big one that I remember. And then the second one, I would have to say, when we talked about the humility, Benedictine humility, that was powerful. And that just kind of keeps coming. It's like it's always like looking over my shoulder, like, oh yeah, oh yeah. So that one's still in process in terms of just seeping into my bones. But I'm attracted to that, just that sense of what does it mean to be humble? What is humility in the Benedictine tradition? Fascinated by that.
Yeah, both beautiful sessions. I can still remember both of those sessions from
Mhm.
your strongly. They were impactful evenings. I
Yeah.
would fully agree. So my final question, Dr. Skinner, and you've just blessed us with so much great information here, is there anything else you would like to say about being an oblate with St. Paul's Monastery that didn't come up?
Um, well, I guess I would say when you first asked me what attracted me to, I think you said to the monastery, to St. Paul's Monastery, and I said, well, you know, kind of like they caught me. I do feel like there's, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but it feels like we have something inside of us that recognizes spirituality and recognizes holiness when we experience it. And our school here is also Lasallian. And so I've had moments like this where I feel very connected to the Lasallian tradition. My aunt is a Franciscan, so she, of course, feels that affinity to the Franciscan order. I'm sure there's some Jesuits out there that, you know, are going to die on the Jesuit hill, and they're amazing. It's an amazing order. But I think if you're thinking about becoming an oblate, specifically at St. Paul's Monastery, or really any Benedictine monastery, you're going to feel it somewhere in you. It's really not like signing up for a club. I think I mentioned that earlier. And it's not something like, well, I should really do this. I really want to get more holy, so I'm going to be an oblate. It's not like that. It's something different. And it compels you. And at some point you just say, your feet just walk, your feet just start going to the monastery. And you look around, you're like, yeah, well, this is my people. This is my home. This feels good. But it's intellectual, yes. It's spiritual of the heart, but it's also physical and visceral. Like just walking into the monastery, you'll feel it, you'll know it. And so if you're considering becoming an oblate, that fact that you're considering is something like lean into that and check it out. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. But there's something there that will touch you, that will connect you, and you'll feel it. I don't know, does that make sense, Kami? Am I crazy?
It totally does, because I think I always ask people, have you spent some time there? Because as becoming an oblate, you're becoming an oblate to that specific
Mhm,
place. And
mhm,
so I think it is important that you have that feeling of being compelled or drawn by the spirit to that particular place.
mhm.
And so I think you said it beautifully, and it doesn't always happen overnight as you experienced. Sometimes
Yep.
it's a drawn out compelling,
Mhm,
but I
mhm.
also hear in your story that it was really worth the wait.
Absolutely. And such a celebration of what already was. Like I felt like I was already Benedictine, but yet, and much like the sacraments in the Catholic Church are a celebration of the grace that has already happened. So I felt like, becoming an oblate was ritualizing, being more public, um, and the commitment, which is real. I mean, it's not, again, you're not checking a box here. It's a real commitment. And I remember signing my commitment sheet up on the altar with Sister Catherine and feeling that weight, like, oh, this feels like for real. This is real. It's great. I love it. I have my little Benedictine pin. I should wear my pin. I have a little Benedictine oblate pin. I wear it proudly.
It's a good reminder, right? Because like you
Yeah.
say, it is this
Mhm.
lifetime commitment
Yep.
to be open
Mhm.
to the Spirit transforming us.
Exactly.
And,
Yeah.
and that takes time.
Yep. Well, and
And
you've been great. You've been a great leader, Cami, and a great inspiration. I remember one time we were chatting over at the monastery not that long ago, and I was kind of going on about everything that's happening in Hill Murray, this, and this, and this. And you stopped me and you said, "How are you doing?" I thought,
uh,
"Oh, that's so Benedictine of you." But it was meaningful, and I think that's all part of it, is that community that you build and caring for each other. That's a very traditional, solid core Benedictine value. It's like we're gonna take care of each other. We're gonna live in community and be in community. So I appreciated that when you did that.
yeah. And I do think you bring up something really important, right? I think your students get to experience that community, that
Hmm.
Benedictine community, and that maybe if others around are missing that, this is another place where you can find community that will walk alongside you
Hmm.
as you're open to exploring what this way of life could mean, and what how might your spirit interact with Benedictine spirituality and those values,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
to live that out. So,
Yeah.
well, Dr. Skinner, we could talk for hours and days. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the way you live out your oblation,
Thank
and I
you.
just look forward to the next time we're together
Thank you. Take care, Cami. It's always good to see you.
too. Bye bye.